So Bayern Munich went out of the Champions League last night against PSG, losing 6-5 on aggregate. Even at the Allianz Arena, they could only salvage a draw with a very last-minute goal from Harry Kane after Ousmane Dembele had scored in the very second minute of the game. And Manchester City basically fumbled their Premier League season, fumbled their entire chances of getting their hands on the trophy, on the Premier League trophy, after such an inspirational run in the past couple months, as now Arsenal are set to be the favourites for both these titles. But at least they do have a strong competitor in the form of PSG in the Champions League. But in the Premier League, Arsenal are basically guaranteed a spot at the Premier League's title-winning list. And it is such a crazy statement to make, because Bayern and Man City, if you looked at their performances, especially since the year started, especially since 2026 started, both these teams deserve to win all the trophies that they can. And Manchester City have already won a trophy. And as things go with Bayern, they basically are guaranteed 1 or 2 trophies every season. But this year, Bayern felt different. This year, it felt like they always feel like an intimidating force. They always feel like a team that can beat anyone. But this year it felt special. This year it felt like they could be a ruthless team on their course to the final, on their course to the trophy. They did get beat by Arsenal 3-1. That was a tough loss to take. But in the grand scheme of things, Bayern were the team to beat. Even PSG could be beaten. Chelsea had done that in the summer. But Bayern had been a really formidable team. And Joshua Kimmich also said this last night. He said that this was the best team in his entire 11 years at Bayern. Not any of the teams that he played before in. Not the team that Hansi Flick had. The team that won the Champions League 6 years back. That wasn't the best team that Kimmich played it. It was this team. And looking at the way Bayern played this season, that wouldn't be the wildest or the craziest of statements to make. And he said this in his interview. He said that in terms of the consistency, because in the yesteryears what used to happen at Bayern was that Bayern used to play at inconsistencies, and they used to be indecent. They used to be somewhat good in the first half of the season, but then they would really gear up. They would really level up in the second half of the season, and they used to finish the season really well. And they'd go on to win all the trophies that they could get their hands on towards the end of the season. But this season, the consistency had been there from the very start of the season. They had been winning from the very start of the season. And that had continued till this game as well, till PSG as well. They had presented a tough task for PSG. They presented a tough task in the first leg. They presented a tough task in the second leg as well, even though Harry Kane only scored in the very dying minute of the game. Bayern were on very level terms with PSG. PSG only edged them to go into the final. And I think PSG would be breathing a sigh of relief, because as good of a performance PSG had, and as good as they looked in both the legs, especially the second leg, because Bayern did slip up in the second leg. And Kimmich also referenced this in his interview, that Bayern had some mistakes in the decisive moments. He wanted to talk about his own performance and not the referee's performance, even though he had been arguing with the referee in the dying minute of the game. And he did receive a booking for that. Kimmich knew that Bayern had slipped up in some of the crucial moments where PSG didn't. And PSG were so relentless. That is why they are in the final. Bayern and Man City, these are the two examples of two clubs that weren't as relentless this season as PSG and Arsenal were. And I even credit Arsenal, because Arsenal have had their moments of slipping up this season. Arsenal have had their moments where they have lost track of their season. They have lost track of their games. And even in the first half of the season, where Arsenal were winning continuously, where Arsenal were proving to be serial winners, a lot of the criticism they were receiving was that they were winning because of the last minute goals from the corners. They were winning many of the goals from set pieces. And yes, they were. That was a very fair criticism. But in the end, Arsenal were getting the jobs done. This was something that Liverpool also did for some time during the previous season, the 24-25 season, and the 25-26 season as well. In the preliminary stage of the season, Liverpool were also getting the job done in the very dying minute of the game, just like Arsenal were with their corners and with their set pieces. They were getting the job done, and that is what matters in football ultimately, that you somehow get to the finish line No matter how good or bad football you play, ultimately what decides is who has more goals. And Arsenal and PSG have gotten that done. And that is why they are in the Champions League final now. That is why Arsenal are at the top right now. Let's not talk about Atletico Madrid, because that was a completely different game, and Atletico Madrid are a completely different side from all these other teams. The thing with Atletico is it's a completely different scenario. And Atletico did deserve the win, the way they had played across the two legs. And it was a little bit controversial too with Atletico, with the penalty decisions over Griezmann and Giuliano Simeone. It was a bit controversial for Atletico, but Arsenal did get into the final. They did get the job done there as well. You can't blame them really for the decision that was made towards the end. And Manchester City, as good as they have been in 2026, they haven't even been the best team in the Premier League, because that have been Manchester United. And even Manchester City took a long time to get their perfect 11 right. Even they took a long time to get their basics right. They took a long time to get the team strategies and their tactical strategies to get working for them. They took a long time to get the machine rolling. And this is something that Thierry Henry talked about a few days ago when he was talking about Chelsea's next manager. What he would have to do, he would have to take some time to develop his ideas, to integrate his ideas into the team, and to reassemble the Chelsea squad, get some new players in. And he talked about how someone like Pep Guardiola, someone with the stature and the experience of Pep Guardiola, had to take his time, had to take half the season to get his best team ready and playing and attacking for Manchester City. He had to get his winning combination and his winning tactics right after a long time, after a long deliberation, after a long hidden trial and error. He had to buy Antoine Semenyo, he had to buy Marguehi to get this Manchester City monster rolling. And even then, he slipped up against Everton. Manchester City weren't as ruthless as they needed to be against Everton. Manchester City weren't as formidable. They weren't as confident against Everton as they needed to be. And in that space of 12 minutes against Everton, where they lost their mark, that perhaps could have been their season decider. That perhaps could have been their title decider. And if it were not for Jeremy Doku's last-minute equalizer, this could have proven to be the decisive loss for Manchester City. At least with Doku's goal, there is some hope for Manchester City. And in an unposted video, I talked about how Doku is the most important player at Manchester City right now. Not Rodri, not Erling Haaland, not Ryan Cherky. It is Jeremy Doku who is the most important player at Manchester City right now. And the way he has played over the course of the season for Manchester City, he has been the driving force for City. And if he had the perfect backup, if he had the perfect team to help him get Manchester City into that mental space, into that space in terms of the team, in terms of their season, in terms of their mentality towards their approach towards the season, this could have been a different season for Manchester City, but it wasn't to be. And ultimately, they've lost out on the chance to win the Champions League. They might just go on to win the FA Cup against Chelsea, because Chelsea are not in the best of positions right now. But their Premier League run right now, it's a lot tougher than Arsenal, what they have. Arsenal only are facing West Ham and Crystal Palace on the tougher side of things. City, on the other hand, are facing Brentford, Crystal Palace, then Chelsea in the FA Cup, then they're facing Bournemouth, and they're facing Aston Villa on the very last day of the league. Now that is a very tough league, even for Manchester City. And at least half of these games are tough to win. So what City will do, it's a tough task. It's really hard to predict with Manchester City where they will go on in terms of the season. But whatever happens, it will be tougher than what Arsenal have at their hand. Arsenal just have to maintain their strategy. They just have to maintain their composure, and they have to maintain the mentality that they have had for the past couple match days. If Arsenal can maintain their state, if Arsenal can maintain their composure, they might just end up with 2 trophies in their hands. Who knows? They might just end up with 2 of the biggest trophies in Europe. and at least one of them is basically guaranteed to them. Now, will that actually happen? That completely depends on Manchester City's approach to the season. And the Champions League final is always going to be difficult with PSG, because PSG are a really good side. They are one of the best sides that we've seen in a long time. They are the team to beat, PSG. And if Arsenal can do that, their name would be remembered. It's not like you can criticize Arsenal for all their flaws throughout the season. You can criticize Arsenal for their approach towards the games and their approach towards the kind of football that they've played over the season. But it's not like winning either of these trophies or both of these trophies would be undeserved for Arsenal. In fact, it could be very deserved. Can they actually do that? Now, that is the thing to see. And that is what we have to look for in the season right now. Anyways, that was it for the video. I just wanted to discuss Arsenal and how Bayern Munich and Manchester City slipping up have led to their defeat. I'll see you guys really soon. If you want to check out my newsletter, which has some interesting articles, I'll link that in the description below, and I'll see you guys really soon. This is Arsh signing off again.